Everybody knows her.
That they should have baby seats in their car.
Everybody knows who.
But they have ignored it.
Which country do they live in now?
No, they have
Everybody
ignored
knows
it.
who.
Wow. Dionne Jackson Miller from TVJ All Angles is on their case. The irony here is Audley Shaw, who is the Minister of Transport and Mining, is not up there. Instead, who we have is Dr. Horace Chang, who is the Minister of Security, and Robert Nestor Morgan, who is the Minister of Information. Robert Nestor Morgan. I wonder if he was named after Robert Nestor Marley. Who knows? Anyway, I'm going to get into this because I thought this was going to die down, but things are just getting crazy and weirder by the minute.
Issues that people are having with the act is that the fines have significantly increased. If you obey the road code,
Yeah, no problem.
the issue about car seats that you've been talking to has been in the law before this one, and it was never executed. We are executing it because we recognize that.
Yeah, but you're executing it in the absence of education and a conversation.
But we have been having education.
So
there.
when a woman
But we're ramping it
when
up.
a woman turns up with a baby tomorrow at a taxi,
Everybody knows that,
at a
really.
taxi stand, everybody knows her.
That they should have baby seats in their car.
Everybody knows who.
But they have ignored it.
Which country do they live in now?
No, they have
Everybody
ignored
knows
it.
who.
You can talk to him and tell you.
You think
But
people
they-
know what was in the old Road Traffic Act?
Yes,
And do you
but they
think people
ignored
know
it.
what is in this
But
one?
they ignored it.
So Horace Chang is saying that people are ignoring the law. I don't think they're ignoring the law. What I think is happening is it's a situation where, of course, we know that a lot of cab drivers, they want to earn a lot of money. So the more people they have in the cars, is the more money they're going to earn. So taxi drivers on a whole are going to look to, cram as much people in the car as possible. The problem comes in is where they're trying to offset or balance the difference between how many people you can carry and how many people you can safely carry. And that's where things become sticky. But for the most part, I don't think they're deliberately trying to sort of ignore the rules. I wouldn't like to think that way, but then again, it's Jamaica, you never know. But what I also want to touch on to is that Gary McKenzie, who is the Assistant Commissioner of Police, I'm going to play this video and let you hear what he has to say in regards to these child booster seats and child harness and baby harness. Because I've always thinking, how are you going to enforce this law when buses and and trains are exempted, if you like, from having these type of seats or harnesses in those vehicles? So how does that work? But then again, I think they're exempt because things are moving kind of quickly. I think they're exempt, and it would make sense for them to be exempted anyway. But taxis, okay, they're smaller vehicles, I can understand it. But it sounds good on paper, and that's the problem with the law. A lot of law sounds good on paper until when it comes to the practical, real terms in reality, it's not so practical then. And that could be a sticky point really where this is concerned. I think this is why the government is backtracking, because they realize it sounds good on paper, it has all the best intentions, I'm sure, but in reality it's not practical, not for Jamaica's current situation anyway. It would have to be a situation where Jamaica's regulations are more brought up to speed or updated. I want to also, illustrate the difference between the different types of seats, because some seats are more practical than others to put in the back of a taxi, especially in Jamaica. And I think a lot of people jump straight to these massive child seats, which occupy probably even 2 people's spaces, really, to be honest, or 1.5 person spaces. But I'll jump into that later. For now, I just want to basically take you to Gary McKenzie, who is the Assistant Commissioner of Police, and hear what he has to say about this whole issue. So let's just jump into that.
I saw something this morning said taxi operator must outfit vehicle with child seat. So I don't think he's asking the question properly. You are saying that they can, but this article said it must.
The article is written that way to say that it must be present in the vehicle, right? And I am saying that if each parent provides that, then you will have it. If they do not, right, then that's a problem for you, because if you transport the child without a child restraint system, a child that cannot be properly secured via seatbelt, then you are the person that the police will prosecute.
Interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but police doesn't have the mandate to prosecute. That's the lawyer's role, isn't it? I mean, police can detain you, arrest you, or write tickets, etc. But it's down to the lawyer to do the prosecution. I know it's just a slip of the tongue. We understand what he means. Right, so Gary McKenzie, Assistant Commissioner of Police, I can gather from what he's saying that there has to be a child restraint system inside vehicles, inside taxis, without exception. And I can understand that. I'm not going to knock that. But then there's a practicality situation. But before we get into the practicality situation, let's just elaborate further on what he said. Basically, what he's saying is the taxi driver will be fined if they're carrying passengers of 12 years and under without the appropriate child restraint system in the car, because as you know, there are various types ranging from an infant baby all the way up to a 12-year-old. So we have to bear that in mind. You can't just put any child restraint system inside a car or a taxi and say, well, you know, if it's not appropriate, then you're still endangering that child's life, but in a different way. And I'll touch on that a bit later. So for the most part, what this means is taxi drivers, to be honest with you, are not going to be lugging around these various different types of child restraint system in the boot or the trunk of their car to accommodate passengers who are carrying, you know, children of 12 years old and younger. Now, so what's going to happen is they're going to basically have a sticker on the car that says, and I don't blame them for this, by the way, for saying, listen, you know, we're not going to take passengers under 12 years old. So that's just what it is. And then so the onus has to be on the passenger to be lugging around and building up their muscles these child restraint systems, and they're going to vary in size and weight depending on the age of the child. Now if it's a young infant baby, then that's different, because you got these buggies that you can push, so that's fine. The push buggy, that's fine. And the push buggy, there's a harness that can be detached from the actual buggy. The buggy can be folded and put in the boot of a taxi or a car, and then the other part of the harness can be attached as a child restraint or infant restraint system in the back of the taxi. That's fine. But then when you have a child that's 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, 7, 8, 9 years old, then that child buggy situation gone out the window. Now you have these mini seats, if you like. You know, if you look at gaming chairs, these mini gaming chairs kind of stuff, where it's got a full harness system to secure the child in. Now those, I don't see passengers lugging those around. That's literally impossible. That's impractical, so that's not going to work. And sorry for that. I'm trying to hold the laughter in, but that just blurted out. Let me contain myself for a second. Hang on. Right, so that's that situation. Then you have the situation of you know, whether the you know, taxi driver, as I've mentioned, is going to have these different various child restraint system in his car. He's not going to have that either. That's not practical. Now here's the other thing. I can see this costing the driver I'm trying to contain myself, bro. I can see this costing the driver a lot of money and time, and I can see the driver and passengers, to be honest, getting furious. And here's why. Imagine you see a guardian or a parent, whether it's a male or female, that's actually flagged down a taxi man stop, or taxi driver stop, pick up the passenger, but before he can pick up the passenger, say, oh, you got a kid that's under 12 years old, okay, have you got the appropriate child restraint system? It won't be, well, I have a child restraint system, because, well, according to your child, you need this particular child restraint system, otherwise I'm going to get a ticket. So you have to have the appropriate one. Now, if you have the appropriate one, then comes the matter of, well, you're going to have to hook it up and install it into the back. And then when you stop, when you reach your destination, you have to unhook it and uninstall it. And that takes time. And that hooking up and unhooking process costs time and money, because as they're fiddling around with that, other taxi drivers is passing him while he's fiddling with that and picking up potential passengers that he could have had. So that's going to cost him money. I can see other passengers who is in a hurry to get to work or wherever it is they want to get to. They got a meeting, they got an appointment, and then there's these passengers messing about with these child restraint systems, and they're just getting angrier by the minute. And I can imagine, even though you want to be patient and respectful, this is Jamaicans we're talking about, and I'm not knocking us in any way. I regard myself as one of you guys, but at the end of the day, I can see some Jamaicans like, boy, what kind of cross is this, man? Me then hurry in a driver, I want to go on here, so sure, I kind of see that going on. I can see a few tempers flaring. So that's not going to be a practical way forward. I just don't know for the life of me why the government decides that they want to come out and update is the word they use, these existing laws in terms of child restraint, and increase the amount of fines that taxi drivers will get. The other thing is this also towards, I'm taking it's not just taxi drivers, it's all drivers. So even though the focus right now and the highlight is on taxi drivers, make no mistake, if you're a family and you have a car, you're going to have the same appropriate child restraint systems in your car, and there's about 4 different types of them depending on the age and the weight of the child. So there's that situation. So even though the focus is on taxis, it's anybody who's got children, or they're driving a car and children are traveling with the car. Even if you go pick up your brethren and your brethren have your sister have kids and the kids are under 12 years old, guess what? You can also get fined because you don't have the appropriate child restraint system in your car. So a lot of Jamaicans are not even looking at that. They're thinking, oh, this is to do with taxi drivers, and we don't like taxi drivers anyway because they're so horrible on the roads. And yes, a lot of taxi drivers do endanger the lives of other road users, including themselves. I agree with that, but at the end of the day, this rule, you better side with the taxi drivers on this one, because it affects every car owner and car driver in Jamaica. It's not just the taxi drivers. So come on now. So what you're trying to say, the extra mile is being put for taxi drivers, but the extra mile is not being put for private people that's carrying, passengers under the age of 12. Come on now, let's use our common sense. And then the government has the audacity to actually, come out and say, oh, this is for child safety reasons. It's not for generating revenue. Oh, really? So why is the focus on taxi drivers so much then? Why didn't you emphasize that this is for car drivers, regardless of whether they're driving a bus, a truck, a van, whatever, a car, a SUV, but that's not seems to be a focus, is it? So what that leads me to is, even though these rules have been in place, as the previous gentleman said it earlier, that these rules have been in existence for some time, it's just that they've increased the fines and that's what people have problems with. No, people have problems with the practicality of what you're trying to enforce. It's not workable, and it's all good and well you have these great ideas that you cook up at Jamaica House and you sit down and you feel proud of yourself. We're so smart and intelligent, we've got these safety rules for children, but no one in the room is saying, well, hang on, how is this going to be workable? Where's the practicality of this? What's the impact? I bet that discussion wasn't made. It was all about how we can generate more revenue, and of course we're going to have to come out and deny that it's about that, because it's governments we're talking about, it's politicians we're talking about, and regardless of which side is in power, the results and the response would have been the same. So we need to realize that politicians are not forthcoming when it comes to the truth. They got that silver tongue, they talk through 2 sides of their mouth, and that's just how it is, and that's not being partisan in any way. It's just politicians on a whole, all over the world. It's just how it is. So when it comes to these child restraint system, all the evidence is pointing that it's a revenue stream that they're trying to generate, and they're targeting taxi drivers, because taxi drivers are the ones that's picking up passengers in profusion. They're the one that's on the road from flipping 6 or 7 in the morning till God knows when, 8, 9, 10 at night. So, and their sole business, their primary business is picking up passengers all day long. So the focus is on them. They passed the law that affects all drivers in Jamaica, but we know the real impact is going to be on taxi drivers. And though I know taxi drivers for the most part doesn't have a good reputation on the roads in terms of their driving, my bet is, if you're going to be a taxi driver, you have to get special license. And when I say license, I mean special training on how to drive before you even get the license to operate a public passenger vehicle. That's what I mean. If you're going to be a bus driver or a truck driver where you drive these articulated lorries, you don't just get the license to drive an articulated lorry. You have to go on the appropriate training first. You have to take the appropriate lessons how to operate that lorry or that bus safely in a manner that is, within the law and within safety before you can get that license. And you have to demonstrate that you have that capability before you get that license. But when it comes to cab drivers on a whole, I suppose if you have a license and you can drive and your brother, your cousin or your uncle teach you how to drive, then yeah man, that would do. Yeah, me have a vehicle, so I can drive, me have a little license, so I can apply for a little public passenger license so I can start hustling and pick up some passenger. But no real formal training, otherwise they wouldn't drive the way they drive on the road. Another way out of it is, this is why, another reason why I say this is generating income for the government. Here's what I'm saying. If someone is a poor driver on the road, what's the most effective way of stopping that? It's not by fines, it's not by writing tickets, because those who can afford it will see it as an overhead that they can write off at the end of the tax year as an expense. So that's not going to deter people. That's just going to generate revenue for the government. That's not going to deter, rather, poor drivers and bad drivers, especially those consistent offenders. You know what's going to deter them? Points on their license or confiscation of their license. So this is to the Jamaican Prime Minister. If you really want to think about safety of children and passengers and road users on a whole, then you should have a law in place that says if you break these laws over these periods, you get X amounts of points on your license. And after a certain amount of points on your license are automatically revoked. And either you're suspended for a year before you can reapply, or whatever the time period is, or your license is cancelled completely, permanently, and you can no longer reapply, no time at all in the future to get a public driver's license again to pick up passengers. That's how you deter safety and that's how you protect the safety of passengers and children, not by charging them a fine and writing a ticket. This is why I say governments talk through two sides of their mouth, and if they really wanted to genuinely think about the people safety and children's safety, it would be a points deducted from your license and revoking of your license if you persistently behave in a manner that's you're endangering other people on the road. If the government was doing that, 90% of these taxi drivers that's wreaking havoc on the roads in Jamaica would be gone. They'll have their car there and they can't drive it. And once they realize that threat of their livelihood is being taken away, then they would basically change their habits, change their bad habits. Because look at the ticket system that they have right now, where the taxi drivers are complaining and marching and demonstrating about, oh, we can't pay these tickets that's racked up into how many thousands that's been, they've been owing for how many years. How comes those tickets hasn't deterred them from behaving responsibly as a taxi driver or even as a driver? You know why? Because it's a revenue situation. It's generating revenue for the government. And I understand the government have to come up with, ingenious ways to, to come up with revenue for the country. But then again, the little revenue that Jamaica is getting, even that money isn't being spent properly, because you look around the infrastructure of Jamaica, and to be honest with you, Jamaica right now is looking worse than Africa. A lot of people used to think Africa is like a Timbuktu, Bakawal kind of. You go to Africa right now and you'll be shocked. Africa is 1,000,000 miles away from Jamaica, but people are still stuck in this syndrome of the 1940s or 50s or 60s or whatever era they used to, and they really think Africa is, everyone is running around in the bush half naked, barefoot and blah blah blah. That's not how it is in Africa. Look at South Africa, look at a lot of these African countries. They got a lot going on for them. Yes, things could be better, no country is perfect, but they're doing better. So that's what the Jamaican government needs to focus on. Focus on taking these bad drivers off the roads, taking these irresponsible drivers off the road, especially those who are persistent. A man pays him ticket, you give him a warning. He missed 3 ticket, fine pan him license. He missed 4 or 5 ticket, license taken away, gone. And not only is your license taken away, you can't drive public passenger vehicle anymore, and you can't drive private vehicle anymore. You can't drive a commercial vehicle, you can't drive nothing. So as soon as you start to apply, his name puts in a database, oh, you've got this point, your license has been revoked or been suspended, sorry, next. That's how you deal with that. That's how you deal with the situation, not by flipping fining. Because okay, we know the taxi drivers are struggling and a lot of them owe a lot of tickets, but the tickets just prove to you that you increasing fines and coming up with fines doesn't solve the problem. You solve the problem by taking away that resources that they use to make money. And I know it sounds bad for poor people hustling and trying to make an honest living, but you can do it responsibly. And for those, let me just say few then, for those few taxi drivers who decide that they're going to be rogue, then they need to lose their license basically and go find another trade. Simple as that. No playing about. So the government is just as disingenuous as a lot of these taxi drivers, to be honest. But at the end of the day, it comes down to this child harness system is just not going to work in Jamaica. Don't see how it's practical. It's not going to work, and I'm waiting to see what the government is going to come up with in order to fix this situation. So that's my 2 cents on that. I just want to quickly jump into the different type of child harness systems and maybe play a couple of audio, and then I'll just finish off this video. Yeah, let's just jump into that. Let me bring these images up, which is basically going to illustrate what I've been speaking about earlier. Now, for an infant, a newborn up to 1 year old, you're looking at a weight of up to 13 kilograms, which is up to 29 pounds in weight. Then the next one up is a 1 to 4 year old, which would weigh between 9 and 18 kilograms, which is between 20 and 40 pounds. The next one up is 3 year old to a 7 year old, which weighs between 15 to 25 kilograms, which is around 33 to 55 pounds. The next one up from that is a 6 to 10 year old, who would weigh on average between 22 and 36 kilograms, which is between 48 and 79 pounds. And finally, you have 9 to 12 year old, which weigh on average between 31 and 45 kilograms, which is around 68 to 98 pounds. Okay. The other thing I want to mention quickly is the 5-step test, and I'll go to them quickly with you. First, the young adult sits all the way back in the vehicle seat with their knees bent at the edge of the seat. 2. The vehicle shoulder belt or straps fits evenly across the young adult's torso or shoulder, not cutting into the neck or the face. 3. The vehicle lap belt is low on the thighs of the adult's hips, touching the top of the thighs. So in other words, the strap that goes, the lower part of the strap that goes across your hip, just basically touch on the top of the thighs of the child. And 4, the young adult's feet are flat on the floor. And 5, the young adult can remain seated comfortably this way for the entire journey. And that concludes the 5-step test basically. Now, whether there's going to have a similar situation for Jamaica, we don't know. We'll wait and see. I did read all the different laws from the 1999, the 2018 and the 2022 laws. I've downloaded all the PDF and I've read them in regards to child seats and safety. It does say a lot about the fines and other stuff, but nothing about this particular 5-step test is outlined within those laws, as if to say these must be in place or this must be a situation before you can, in terms of how you harness a child inside a car. So that's just another thing. I thought I'll go through that with you. But I just want to say, you can see now where, because of the different types of child restraint system, and I did mention you have to have the appropriate one depending on the size and the age or weight of the child, you can now see where this is impractical. Mothers are not going to be lugging this stuff around to take a taxi with their child. This is just impossible. The booster seat maybe, but even that could be cumbersome, but definitely not these chairs. I mean, for the youngest one, you can see it can be detached and attached to a buggy, a push buggy. A lot of modern buggies, baby buggies, are designed that way. But for the other older children, I don't see how that's going to be practical. This is why I said I don't see how this was practical to work in the first place. Whether it's going to be taxi drivers storing this in the boot of the car, or for parents or guardians to be lugging this around with them. And the same goes for private vehicles, because if you have a friend or uncle, mother, whatever, and you're picking up someone, whether it's a friend or another family member, if they don't have these appropriate child restraint system inside the car, then according to the law you can't carry them either, and if you do, you can incur a fine. So that's that to think about. Let us now listen to the current Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness, and the Assistant Commissioner of Police, Gary McKenzie, after the rebellion, or should I say the uprising from the taxi drivers in regard to the child harness situation.
With the provision for enforcement of a child restraint system in public passenger transportation, in itself needs further review. And we have spent the last hour and a half in cabinet going through it, and it is a very deep issue. We have decided, in support of the position adopted by the police, and already explained that they will apply greater discretion in the enforcement of the rule. We have decided that we will make some amendments to the law, and we will do so as quickly as possible. It may come in the form of amendments to the regulations, which can be done very quickly by a ministerial direction, which may not necessarily need to go to Parliament, or if it does, as soon as possible in Parliament. But I think that there has to be even further discussion around safety in public transportation. And that will need a much wider debate, and possibly amendment to the law itself, not just the regulation, but to the act itself, which may come in a month or two or so, depending on how fast we can move with consultations and further deliberations on the matter. So specifically, therefore, as it relates to the child restraint system in public transportation, we will make some amendments to the regulations, or as quickly as we can to the law, to give, or both, to reflect the current state of Jamaica's situation as it relates to public passenger transportation.
As a result of this ongoing review, the police will use their discretion in relation to the seat belts and the child restraint systems, and will allow public passenger vehicles to operate, as it were, under the old law until that review has been completed.
Yo, okay, I'm not surprised at the way Andrew Holness has responded. He used a lot of we've decided. He used that repeatedly, as opposed to coming clear and saying, listen, we've caved under pressure from the public backlash because this policy was ill thought through and it wasn't practical to be enforced. But then again, there it is. Again, you hear Gary McKenzie with a similar song sheet, basically saying law is under review, and until further notice, the police can use their discretion, and so on and so forth. And I understand all of that is damage control, but at the end of the day, I'm still here thinking I would love to see how they're going to skirt around this one, because you can't bring in policies where the country doesn't have the infrastructure to sort of implement it in a smooth and effective way. Otherwise, what you're going to end up doing is crippling a large section of society, especially those of the working class. I just don't see how this is going to be workable. But we do understand that you have to, at the end of the day, put some paramount interest for motorists on the road, especially child. So, children comes first in that respect. So it's just one of those things where we'll just have to wait and see how they're going to maneuver around this one. But being politicians, I'm sure they're going to come up with some bright ideas. And I say bright ideas in inverted commas. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully they can come up with a balance that serve to protect children and serve to protect motorists traveling in vehicles, including taxis, but at the same time something that doesn't disrupt or hurt the honest working man, because you just have to find a way to strike that balance. So with all that said, We'll just have to wait and see. Until next time, keep it locked, stay cool.